Hello, and welcome back into another episode of the Sunday Spin. Just kidding. This is Behind the Glass Sports, but it is Selection Sunday in the college basketball world. Would you believe I actually did that wrong, that I didn't do that on purpose? Anyway, moving right
I don't know. I think
along.
that was intentional.
No, actually, so that's where we're at this point in lacrosse season for me. It's 2 weeks in, and we're already at that point. But Hardy, a March Madness bracket in the year of our Lord 2025 officially exists. The hype train starts now. First games are at what 10:30 a.m. on like Wednesday or something. I'm calling out of
Uh,
work. I don't know about you.
yeah, the first four games start. I think they're Tuesday and Wednesday night. Some pretty interesting picks for those. UNC playing San Diego State, Texas getting in to play Xavier. 14 teams from the SEC made it to the NCAA tournament. Um, All-time record. The previous record was 11 set by the Big East. If SEC had gotten just 12 in, they would have broken the record. They got two more on top of that. And it's a record
You
that
said
I
14?
imagine. Yes, 14 out of the 16 teams in the SEC made it at least to the first four. 13 are in the field altogether. Texas is going to Dayton for the first four games. Um, and this Xavier team has some big time holes. I would not be surprised if Texas was able to pull off a win right there. But yeah, the tournament bracket is set. And for all the Alabama fans out there, they will be playing in the East Regional. That means the Duke Blue Devils are the number one seed in that region. Duke notably won the ACC tournament without Cooper Flagg, who went down
Yep.
in their first ACC matchup, ankle sprain. No one really has any clue when he's going to be back, but they are still a very dangerous team. Still have multiple first round picks on that roster. Still coached exceptionally well. Took care of business in the ACC. Took care of business in the ACC title game against a Louisville team that I'm pretty high on going into this tournament. They've done a big time turnaround in year one under Pat Kelsey, but this.
I think going in without Cooper Flag, for the first time all year, really, save for the couple of games in the tournament they had to finish out. I think that presents a really interesting conundrum for opposing coaches. You know, this is probably, we know it is still a pretty good team, but like, who knows how they're going to play without him? I mean, like every bit of film you have on them this season and how they played is with that star player. Now you have to just sort of take your best guess at how they're going to run things without him. That's going to be really interesting to see if he's not back, maybe at first, how opposing coaches have to go about that.
Yeah, definitely provides a different look. To me, Duke with Cooper Flag, national championship contender, like one of the best teams in the country, absolutely. Without him, I mean, the ceiling is still, possible Final Four, Elite Eight, like that. I mean, there's still like a very very dangerous team.
Yeah.
Will provide a lot of challenge. But just getting into this tournament bracket, Alabama placed in the East Regional, as I mentioned. That means the final for that regional, if they make it through the first weekend, will be in Newark, New Jersey, um, up there right by New York. So that will be, really fun, big time atmosphere for them. Um,
Lot
Crimson
of
Tide,
alumni up there for the Crimson Tide.
yeah, big time, you know, right outside of New York. There's going to be a lot of focus, especially with Duke being in that regional. A lot of national media attention will be focused on Duke. A lot of Cooper Flag stuff, who is projected to go to number one in this upcoming NBA draft. It's going to be a lot of hype, a lot of pressure circulating around that team. The Crimson Tide opens up the 2025 NCAA tournament against Robert Morris. Um, Pretty good team out of, let me just find out what
I
conference
mean, they
they're
do have a
in.
better
But
record, technically.
yeah, I mean they've been pretty solid. They've made This is not their first trip to the NCAA tournament, but it has been a number of years since that's happened. But for Robert Morris, yeah, they were first in the Horizon League. It's just one of those things that they're one of the classic we're the mid-major team, and we won our regular season, and then just went out, took care of business in our conference tournament.
Yeah.
They didn't necessarily pull any upsets, anything like that. Just went out there, took care of business, didn't
Just played
allow
some ball.
for any. Yeah, just played some ball.
Yeah.
If and when the Tide gets through that matchup, they'll play the winner of St. Mary's and Vanderbilt. First time Tide played Vandy this season, wasn't too much of an issue. That game, of course, in Coleman Coliseum. Would be interested to see how they play out on a neutral court. It's one of those things that you're just going to have to keep an eye on. St. Mary's, really good team out of the WCC. They finished first in the regular season, lost in the conference championship game against Gonzaga. Really tough break for them. Probably lost them a seed line, losing that game to Gonzaga. But just, going down the rest of the regional, Duke will play the winner of whoever the 2-16 first four is. Mississippi State plays Baylor in the 8-9 game.
Which honestly, this might be a little hyper local for me. That is going to be such a fun game for like just the DMV in general. Like Mount St. Mary's is such a safe school for kids at prep schools and Catholic schools in the DC area, and American University is obviously right there in the heart of the city. No, that's going to be a fun game. There's a lot of alumni and a lot of families in the area that have very strong connections to both of those fan bases.
Yeah, it'll be a really fun, inner city matchup between those two teams. Sadly, the game will be taking place in Capital One Arena right there in the heart of DC, but
right.
They can make the trip over to Dayton if they want to go see it. They'll get Duke,
if your kid's going to American, you've got PTO, you can do it.
Yeah, and in the past couple of years, we've seen a couple of 16 seeds knock off the 1 seeds. It's happened twice now. Fairleigh Dickinson did it. And UMBC did it to Virginia back in 2018, if I'm not mistaken. Both of those were just a super matchup dependent type of things. I don't really see either one of those 16 seeds knocking off this Duke team, especially if Cooper Flagg gets back and healthy. 8-9
I'm just saying that if it's going to happen, it's going to be a Mid-Atlantic team.
Yeah.
It's going to be a team from Baltimore. It's going to be a team from New Jersey. It's going to be a team from just over the state line in Pennsylvania, or it's going to be a team I'm just saying it's going to be a Mid-Atlantic team. All right,
okay. So you're saying the winner of the 8-9 Mississippi State Baylor game is not going to be able to pull off that second round upset against the Blue Devils?
No, I'm saying the Blue Devils ain't going to be there.
Oh, fair enough. That would be a interesting turn of events if that were to happen. But like I said, Mississippi State Baylor 8-9 game, Oregon Liberty in the 5-12 matchup, Arizona Akron, interesting game. Akron won the MAC, really good team out of right there. BYU playing VCU in a fun little 3-letter game. It should be. That's
gonna be a frisky ball game.
Yeah, probably one that a lot of people are going to pick an upset for. I'll see how I'm feeling once I actually sit down and put together this whole damn thing. Wisconsin, Montana, that's the 3-14 game, and like I already said, St. Mary's 7, Vandy 10. In general, I think this is a pretty good draw for Alabama. In terms of the 7 seeds that they could have played Marquette, who's really good, who has the Big East Player of the Year, Cam Jones. Could have played Kansas, who was the preseason number 1 team in the country. Tons of talent on that team, even though they hadn't necessarily put it together. UCLA, Mick Cronin, one of the best coaches in college basketball. They struggle. They have actually, funny enough, games they played east of the Mississippi this year, they've been horrible. But west of the Mississippi, they've been awesome. They didn't.
All about how the water washes.
Yeah, so didn't have to go to the East Coast. I think they're playing UCLA is playing Utah State in the first round. That's in the the Midwest Regional, I believe.
There's a lot of words.
Houston's the 1 seed right there. And looking at this Alabama Regional, some teams that stick out. Wisconsin's good. Arizona has enough interesting pieces that they could definitely make a run.
Yeah.
We already know Duke is one of the better teams in the country. So
Oregon beat them in the NIL tournament earlier in the year.
Yeah.
Two different teams at this point. That was so long ago, but
yeah, and BYU's been dangerous too. There are some landmines along this path, but I think in terms of just first look on paper at some of the matchups they might have to play in the early couple of rounds, I think this path for the Tide is very favorable. I like their chances against either St. Mary's or Vanderbilt. And then, if they play a Wisconsin team or a BYU team, I think they match up pretty well against both of them. I could also, as we mentioned, I could see VCU making a Sweet 16 run out of it.
Yeah.
And
the thing I really like about this, Hardy, is I think you're right. It's a favorable matchup for Alabama. This has been a very, even more so than usual in recent years, a very intense rivalry between the fan bases on either side of the state this season. Tensions have been high. Words have been exchanged on the Twitter machine incessantly. And I think as far as bragging rights go, who knows if Alabama's able to replicate what the magic run they went on last season and go all the way to the Final Four. But if I'm looking at the regional that Alabama got picked for, I like their chances a lot of going past Auburn and getting to say they had a better season than Auburn did, even though that's not really how it works, but that's how it looks on Twitter. Because, again, Auburn in the first weekend is not a good history here recently.
Yeah,
and if they win their first game,
they have not made it.
They've got to beat Louisville or Creighton.
Yeah, and then both of those teams are very capable of
really
pulling that upset. I like Creighton probably to win that game. I think they would give Auburn a better shot too, mostly because Creighton also has some elderly statesmen on their team as well that could give Auburn some issues. Great rebounding down low, Brian Kalkbrenner. And just looking at like the lay of the land, if you look, it's Alabama lost in this their second game of the SEC tournament, SEC semifinals to Florida. Got essentially run off the floor. Grant Nelson didn't play at all in that second half. The minutes that he did not play, the Tide looked horrible. Don't know the current status of Grant Nelson. He's going to go see a knee specialist tomorrow. Hopefully we get some word. Hopefully he is back healthy. I have confidence in this team that these first two rounds, they could, if necessary, win without him. I do not want to put this team in that situation. I would rather have him on the court, of course. But just the way that some of these matchups are laid out, like their chances, even with him not playing. Hopefully Darian Reed, we've been talking about this for feels like 2 months, can finally be 100% and really get some run. But
well, and hopefully you're able to get Mo Diabate continuing on his trajectory upward that you've been getting over the last handful of weeks out of him. I think that, and I think that while he and Grant Nelson are obviously different players, I think that the way Mo has been playing recently, he's able to fill that role if Grant is not available.
Yeah, especially against some of these teams that don't necessarily have all the size in the world. That's really something that's killed Alabama a lot this season, is having really big guys down low that can out-rebound them. In games that Cliff Amore has has 3 rebounds or less, Tide's 0-3. He's going to have to really step up in the absence of Grant Nelson. He should, first of all, never have 3 or less rebounds in a game. It's an absolutely asinine stat to begin with. But when he rebounds well, the Tide tends to win those games. Kind of hindsight is 20. Florida is in the country right now. They've looked
obviously
awesome. Rolled through Alabama, beat up on Taylor today. Looking at it, they get a second round matchup against the reigning back championship or an Oklahoma team that has a future lottery pick in Jeremiah Fears. It's a pretty tough out. Sweet 16, could play a Memphis team that's been very competitive all year, or Maryland, who's has also been good. The bottom half of that
No,
bracket.
they'll go out with a buzzer beater in the first round.
Yeah, I mean the bottom half of that bracket has Missouri, Drake, Texas Tech, Kansas. John Calipari, Arkansas, Boogie Fland is supposed to be coming back. That could be an interesting team to make a little Sweet 16 run in this tournament. Rick Pitino.
By the way, St. John's is in there.
Yeah, Rick Pitino is looming. His track record speaks that whenever he coaches a team, the first year they might struggle a little bit. Second year, they're aiming for the Final Four. They have the defense and the wherewithal players to be able to do that. It's been, they ran away with the Big East, won the Big East title game against Creighton, and they've looked awesome. Had they gotten more quad one wins, we probably would be talking about them as a 1 seed over maybe even a Florida or a Houston or something like that. But didn't necessarily.
I'd go over Auburn.
I wouldn't put them over Auburn. But I mean, this
is a biased program, Hardy.
I understand it's a biased program. I tip my cap when I need to tip it. But I mean,
right, fair enough.
I mean, this bracket. Generally speaking, I think the committee did pretty well on it. The thing that really sticks out is didn't get Boise State, didn't get Indiana in the field. 2 teams that didn't get Ohio State in the field. It's a couple of teams that probably had better resumes than North Carolina. North Carolina getting the first 4 game to Dayton. Whether they deserve it or not, who knows? They're in the field now. They can either win the game in Dayton and then maybe pull off an upset in the first round. I believe the winner of the UNC San Diego State game will play Ole Miss in that 6-11 game. So, if UNC wants to go out there and prove to everybody that they belong in this
tournament, they'll play Iowa State. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at it wrong. I'm sorry, Hardy.
Yeah. If they want to prove to everybody that they belong in this bracket, then go take care of business.
Win.
Beat a San Diego State team that's not nearly as good as the one that went to the Final Four a couple of years ago. I mean, this is a team that barely made it into the field. Their biggest win right now is over Houston, who's awesome. San Diego State upset them in that NIL tournament. That was when Houston was probably playing their worst basketball of the season. They've been a whole hell of a lot better since then, only losing 2 games since November. Definitely, people might be sleeping on them a little bit. They're one of the best teams in college basketball. Aiden, just
consistent too.
Yeah, and just looking around the landscape of this bracket, give me like 3 quick picks of some upsets you can see in the first round.
I'm gonna take VCU. That's a little home cooking for me. I got a deep love for Richmond. I got a deep love for Sonny Smith and everything he did there. So I am going to take the Rams over BYU just to be, a little bit of a homer and a little bit frisky. And Hardy, you tell me. I mean, is Georgia over Gonzaga really an upset?
Based on seed line, yeah. Gonzaga's top 10 in KenPom. I mean, like that's a tough second round draw for Houston. I mean, all the analytics based stuff says Gonzaga's a top 10 team. The resume, it's the WCC. They play St. Mary's twice. That's their only real opportunities to get Q1 wins. But everything analytics based, I think I was listening to something earlier this week, and I think 20 or 21 of their 25 wins, they've won by 20 plus points. So the games that they win, they beat the hell out.
They're not coming down to the wire.
Yeah, I mean the games that they win, they're beating the hell out of teams. Games that they lose, they're close. They've.
Well, I tell you what, I'm actually going to take both of my 2 of my 3 out of the West. Is actually where I'm going to go here. I would go ahead and take Oklahoma over UConn. I just think that UConn has problems. as a team, as an organization right now. And when you get in the spotlight, when the pressure's on, when it finally counts, I think that's when things like that are going to show the most. I don't know what's going on with Dan Hurley. I know he's always acted like a bit of a fool, but it seems to be turned up to 11 this year. I'm getting big Nick Sirianni vibes at this point.
Happens.
You know,
Well, Nick Sirianni did just go win a Super Bowl, so
no, Howie Roseman just went and won a Super Bowl. Let's be abundantly clear on that.
Fair enough.
You know, no. So I actually, I know it's a 9/8. It's not a, super crazy upset to pick or anything, but I would go ahead and take Oklahoma over UConn in the first round. I also anti-homer take. I could totally see Grand Canyon beating Maryland.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but like it's going to look similar to the rock fight that we saw Alabama have to play in. I think that'll rattle the Terrapins a little bit. And I don't think the basketball gods are on College Park's side this season. 5 buzzer beaters. Hardy, 5 buzzer beaters this season they've lost on. That's just whack. That is cruel and unusual punishment. And I think, just for a little bit of comedy, they're going to go out on a 6th in that first round.
Yeah. When your best player on your entire team, your leading scorer, is a true freshman, Derek Queen, who's going to be a lottery pick, amazing, outstanding player for the Terrapins this season.
Yep.
When your best player is a freshman and, you rely on that guy to do a lot, we saw it with Alabama a couple of years ago. Brandon Miller couldn't necessarily step up in the biggest stage. Some guys are built for it. Some guys like elevate to like All-American level status. Some guys kind of stay on the level that they've been at. Some guys kind of trickle off a little bit. When you're expecting a guy like Derek Queen to go out there and lead your team to success, and he's got all the talent in the world to be able to do that, could definitely mount some pressure. But I love Grand Canyon's backcourt. Tyon Grant Foster, 6-7 point guard for Grand Canyon's. Played at Kansas and DePaul, was there last year, gave the Tide tons of problems.
All sorts of fits.
He's a very good player. He did get injured earlier this year, hasn't had necessarily as productive of a season as he had last year, but they took care of business in the WAC Conference Championship game. That was also a game that I was looking at as a big-time upset. For me, looking to the Midwest region, where an old friend of the SEC, Will Wade, will get his opportunity to secure a first-round victory over the Clemson Tigers. McNeese State, really good. Vibes are super high. You've seen that student manager that walks around with it.
Lots of energy in that tournament, and that conference.
The energy is there. A lot of people picked them to get an upset last year. I did not pick them to get that upset. I will be picking them to pull it off this season. I think they're, just have better players, a little bit more leadership experience, all of that kind of stuff. They've looked really good. They played some teams that they've played this season have been really good, and they've competed well, and it has not surprised me one bit whatsoever. Had 6 losses on the season. One of those coming to Alabama. They lost pretty close game to Liberty, Santa Clara. Liberty's in the tournament. Lost by 3 against Mississippi State. Got picked off against Nichols. That was their only loss in conference play at Nichols. Really interesting, fun team. Will Wade is going to be vying for one of these job openings in the ACC, I'm assuming. So, whatever position opens up, he will be one of the first people. Who knows? He might get the Villanova job. That would be a huge spot for him. I don't know if they'll go that direction, but would be interesting to see. I just think he's
that would be the best job he's had yet.
And I think he's really, really good. Last one that I'm gonna pick just 2 more. I'm gonna pick 2 10s over 7s. I'm gonna pick Vanderbilt to upset St. Mary's.
Okay.
I don't believe in the Gales.
Fair.
Their pace of play is like it makes your eyes bleed. I don't like watching it. And for that reason alone, I'm going to pick against them. And then also in the South region, I'm going to pick probably, despite what my better judgment tells me, I'm going to pick New Mexico and Richard Pitino to upset Shaka Smart in Marquette in the first round. Really like that matchup. Darian Dent, awesome player, Mountain West Player of the Year for New Mexico. It's been awesome all season. So aside from that, those are kind of the early look upsets that I've kind of keyed in on and that I really like. Everything other than that, I mean, the 1s and 2 seeds in this NCAA tournament are probably better than the typical. Like, it really feels like there's a cutoff. Top 8.
It's very top heavy.
And then there's a gap. Like a really. Sometimes it feels like you could be like, maybe one of these 3 teams, like one of the 3 seed teams, belongs in a 2. No, I feel like it's pretty definitive this year. Texas Tech maybe being the only one that has an argument, but they couldn't make it to that Big 12 title game. Michigan State did get picked off in the Big 10, but they're still awesome. Tom Izzo, Hall of Fame coach, has won a national championship, has made the NCAA tournament for I think it's like 21 straight seasons, something stupid. They'll be very competitive.
Automatic.
St. John's, Rick Pitino, same type of thing. Rick Barnes, same type of thing. It's all the 3-2 seeds besides Alabama are all just like these super defensive oriented teams that are just like, that will just absolutely clamp you down. And then the other 2 seeds is Alabama, who's like, we're just going to try to outrun you the entire game.
Well, it's crazy because, like, what we know about Nate Oates is, like, he'd rather be a super defensive team that is also capable of playing efficient offense. And then that just never works out for him.
Yeah. Well, the 2 teams that won the SEC tournament and the SEC regular season titles in 2021, 2023, those were like elite defensive teams. The offense on those teams was also like top 20, top 15-ish, like really, really good, but they weren't like, number 1, 2, 3 like they've been the past 2 seasons. They've kind of gotten, I don't want to necessarily say they've gotten away from some of the defensive stuff, but bringing in some smaller guards, all of that kind of stuff, the pace just continuing to speed up more and more and more. Guys are more concerned about getting the ball and going back down the other way than like really settling in, playing defense.
Yeah.
Saw some of that yesterday in the SEC tournament game against Florida. Gators,
and the further you fall behind, the worse that's going to get. The more and more you feel like you've got to be ready to hit the big, but you can't. There's no grand slam in basketball. You can only get 3 points at once.
Yeah, you've got to sit there and slowly grind. Like, the team tends to, when they fall behind, they've been able to grind back a little bit in some of these games. The Missouri game, they got it kind of close. The Auburn game earlier in the season that they lost, got it kind of close. Couldn't really get over the hump. They kept grinding back in those games. The Florida game was a completely different story. Got down double digits and then just started taking more outside shots, and none of them would fall. And pretty soon the lead had ballooned out to 24 points, ended up losing by 22. We know the Gators are good, but Alabama left them wide open, and they hit their shots. Yesterday, Alabama was left wide open on a handful of possessions. They could not hit their shots. That was the difference in the game. Losing Grant Nelson sucks. Hopefully he's back for the NCAA tournament at some point. Hopefully the Tide is in the tournament long enough for him to return at some point. But other than that, it was pleasant to see the win against Kentucky Friday night. Really just blew the brakes off of them. This team has been really good. They look great against teams that are good. But when they play some of the great teams this season, there has been some struggles. Did get the upset win in Neville, blew the game against Tennessee, as we know.
But that's against Rick Barnes, so it doesn't count.
Yeah. Lost 2 bad games to Todd Golden and the Gators. Todd Golden's kind of got Nate Oates' number right now. Kind of like how
Yeah.
Natives had Will Wade's number for a couple of years in the SEC. Definitely feels that way. We'll see if they can get back to kind of figuring something out, but they wouldn't see Auburn or Florida unless they met them in the national championship game. I think this team has the
Not
ability
out
to
of the realm of possibility.
not out of the realm of possibility. If we get a 4-team SEC Final Four, first of all, that would be crazy.
Yeah.
You know,
Do you know how much?
but
Do you know how much Big Ten and ACC crying there would be on the internet? It would be the most wonderful thing in the world.
I think it would be fun if it was Bama, Auburn, Florida, and then Tennessee just didn't make it to the Final Four yet again because they've still yet to secure that elusive Final Four. And I think getting knocked out in the Elite Eight by a Gonzaga or a Houston or Purdue
let's say Texas goes on that run and is the 4th team. All right, let's say Texas does it. They've been peaking at the right time.
That would be right. Well. Kentucky's right there in that same quadrant as Tennessee. Maybe they could go on that Sweet 16 run. First year under Mark Pope, immediately after getting rid of John Calipari. They do get Lamont Butler back. They're a better team when he plays. I do like them.
Wouldn't it be glorious to beat? Wouldn't it be glorious to beat Kentucky for them to make the Final Four and beat Kentucky a 4th time this season? That would be incredible.
First of all, that'd be great. I just don't. They're missing. They're kind of what like the Tide was last year. Offense was crazy good. Defense was like, oh god. Kentucky feels a lot like that. The defense isn't quite as bad as Alabama's was last season, but the offense isn't like as unnecessarily good as Alabama's was last season. But for Alabama to make a deep run in this tournament, March Sears needs to arrive. He's been struggling from outside, kind of tweaked his foot early in the Florida game. So hopefully the thing that's missing with this team is that they just need a week to just kick back and just chill out and, ice down all of the bumps and bruises.
Well, we've talked about that on this show before, like a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about, the SEC tournament coming and everything. And I kind of said, I was just like, look, I go out in the first round. I don't care. Rest up. It seemed to work out last season.
Yeah. Well, and they got more, 5 days, something like that, of rest between the Auburn game and the Kentucky game, or 6 days. And they came out and that Kentucky game, that was probably their best game of the season. One would argue, took a team that is currently a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament and bent them over. And sent them packing
29
back
points.
The really fantastic performance. Hopefully they can do that in the first round and not even put the game in any sort of question. I don't think Alabama fans want to get their heart racing this early into the NCAA tournament. I know that I do not, because that is not something that I need.
I don't know. I enjoyed that Grand Canyon game last year.
Well, but that was the second round. We at least weekend. We played. It was the same weekend, but that game was a rock fight.
It was awesome. It was just great.
Yeah, it was like every single time down the court, whistle.
No, they were out there playing lacrosse.
Yeah, hopefully we don't see any of that. I really love Bama's chances to make it to the Sweet 16 pretty comfortably. You're a 2 seed. Based on where you're seated, the expectation for this team is the Elite Eight. A bunch of people had this team preseason number 1 in the country coming in. So those kind of expectations, the team was projected to make it back to the Final Four, maybe make a run for the national championship. I think they can still do that. But the injury stuff is definitely caught up.
Yeah.
Some of that depth is, that we talked about it in the preseason. It's not necessarily there anymore. There's a couple of guys that I don't know if they're quite ready to play massive amounts of minutes. Aiden Terrell has been awesome at times this season.
Yeah, and you really might need to lean on him against some of these more physical defensive teams at some point. He's such a big body that you got to figure out how to best use him and what his role is. This is something that I like. If I have a criticism of Nate Oates' teams in recent years, I think it is the lack of not just height, but of size.
Yeah,
just girth, thickness, muscle, strength.
Just being physically dominant down low. Going up.
They
with
can't
two
play
hands,
bully ball.
Going up with two hands and just, there's a lot of times where they're trying to like get a tip in or like do something else, and I don't know if they're coached this way or not. They might be told to try to do that. It might just be pure instinct. Sometimes I wish they would just go up and grab a rebound strong, pull it down with two, and go up and finish strong rather than trying to just weakly tap it in or something like that.
Yep. People make fun of her all the time because she can't make the first shot. But that's how Angel Reese gets most of her points in the WNBA and got them at LSU.
Yeah.
It's a very effective style of play. I know that's women's versus men's, but nonetheless, we've seen a pro player do that at the high level recently, and it's effective.
Yeah, and Cliff Amore and Aiden Terrell are built in a way that they could go up strong, pull down boards like maniacs.
Yeah,
and really finish strong around the rim, or at least get other teams in foul trouble. And Terrell is, he can knock down an outside shot. Cliff Amore, he's been knocking down his free throws as of late. So if that can keep up, huge for the Tide. Jaron Stevenson's going to need to be strong for this run.
He's going to need to make a basket.
I mean, sometimes, fun fact, I don't know if you knew this, but Jaron Stevenson took the most shots for the Alabama Crimson Tide yesterday.
No, I did not know
that. Yes, he led the Crimson Tide in shots. Whether you or I.
Now, what was the shot percentage?
I'll let you take a guess on that one. But
go 13.5.
I think it was 2 of 6 from 3. I mean, he was probably the only one. Well, Chris Youngblood knocked in a couple of threes. But, he was really just chucking up shot attempts. He led the Crimson Tide. He was 3 of 11 from the field, 2 of 8 from the three-point line, 2 of 5 from the free throw line. If teams are letting him shoot and he's shooting and they're not going in, that is detrimental to this team. We know that he possesses the ability to knock down shots at an efficient rate. He has done it before. He did it last year against Clemson in the Elite Eight. He's done it in 1 or 2 games this season. But in nowhere on God's green earth should Jaron Stevenson be leading this team in shot attempts ever.
It's not like Mark Sears played 8 minutes,
Yeah, I mean, Mark Sears, yeah. Jaron Stevenson played more minutes than Mark Sears.
No, by 3, look at that.
Yeah, and one of the things I don't really understand, so, Tide was getting out-rebounded all day yesterday. Cliff Amore, he was in foul trouble, only had 3 personals. Aiden Terrell only played 13 minutes. He didn't have a personal in the game. You're getting out-rebounded. Those are your 2 biggest guys, Nate. Put them in the game.
Yeah.
Like, find minutes for them. Instead, they're, trying to – and I love Mo Diabate. He is not as long of a defender as Herb Jones is. He plays a game very similarly to him. But Herb Jones was an all-SEC defender, is one of the 10 best defensive players in the entire NBA. At this point in his career, Mo Diabate is not that.
No.
When he's facing up against,
develop into that, but that's
but
not
at this
today.
point in his career, when you're facing off against bigger, stronger guys, It would help to get some size in there. It would really help if instead of letting a team go on a 6-0 run, you call a timeout instead of letting them go on a 12-0 run before you call that timeout, because you're just trying to show your guys that I'm not going to save you, essentially, which is the most – I mean, in some situations – you got to, you're going to have to you're going to be in a hole at some point in this NCAA tournament, and you're going to have to dig yourself out of it. One of the very easy ways that you can get something like that started is to call a timeout, draw up a set play to get an easy bucket and see the ball go in.
Yeah.
That is something that, and for whatever reason, a lot of teams, when the ball goes out of bounds, they take that as an opportunity to call a set play and try to get themselves a more or less great look at the bucket rather than just like kind of throw something together. I don't want to speak for, Nate Oates, the rest of the coaching staff. Sometimes it feels like they're not doing that. They're just kind of throwing the ball out and letting the guards just call a pick and roll and just going with it.
I mean,
and it works.
If you genuinely believe that is your best opportunity to score, then that's what you have to do. But I'll say this. With my own team, I sometimes feel like the best way that I have confidence of us generating a point on offense is I got two kids that we're just going to get the ball to them and let them go play a little bit of hero ball. That being said, I'm not a Division I program. I'm not in a gym more hours a week than I'm in the classroom. I don't have hard line required attendance where everybody knows every play in the playbook and everyone's on the same page. I'm lucky if I get 7 kids at practice, and I'm lucky if each kid is at practice more than twice in a week. So yeah, I got to let my guys just go make something happen. That's not what's going on here. You got to get them in front of the clipboard and start doodling.
Yeah, and sometimes you're not going to be able to actually draw something up. Late game situations, out of timeouts, that's when you take the opportunity, try to draw up your best play. But simple like out of bounds stuff, you should have 10 different things you could call. Just on a whim that every player is very comfortable with, and say, okay, hey, we know this guy's had a hot hand. Let's run this real quick. Get him open.
And you gotta pick the 5 going in practice the day before the game. You gotta pick the 5 that you turn on the tape and you go, against this team, against this set of personnel, I feel like these ones are gonna work. If they've got these guys on the floor, it's one of these 3. If they've got these guys on the floor, it's one of these 3.
Yeah, and sometimes it just feels like it's a lot of pick and roll, kick out the shooters. And it works. They've gotten to a Final Four. He's won multiple SEC titles. I'm not going to sit here and tell Nate Oates that his style of coaching is wrong.
I'm just saying, in certain situations, there are things that he could, and every coach could improve on.
Yes.
Some coaches have, historically, the thing that they do best is defend sideline out of bounds plays. That's what Auburn's been really good at this season. One of the things that they've really tipped their cap on, ball goes out of bounds, they're not going to let you score. If some other teams, it's just about hard-nosed, gritty defense, might be rebounding, really going up and getting offensive rebounds, anything like that. Crimson Tide, it's usually we're going to put up more threes than you, and if we shoot 40%, then we're going to blow you out of the gym. If we shoot 33%, we'll be in a game. If we shoot less than 20, then we'll be struggling. And that's just generally how it kind of goes. It's not a live and die by the 3 because they've been able to score in different ways, score really efficiently around the rim at the free throw line. I wouldn't say efficiently around the free throw line.
The most recent Auburn game in Neville, perfect example. I mean, the vast, vast, vast majority of the points in that game came from inside the paint.
Yeah. This team is built to score in different ways, more so than just knocking down threes. Knocking down threes makes things a lot easier.
Makes it more fun.
3 is more than 2. Everyone loves to say bottom as much as
Yep.
the next guy, listening to Chris Stewart on the broadcast. But sometimes you're going to play a team, and you've played a couple of teams this season that say, we're going to guard you on the outside, we're going to drop our big, and we're going to leave them, that mid-range space open. If you want to continue to drive right to our big, that's perfectly fine. If you want to actually sit there and take that mid-range jump shot, we'll let you have it. We don't think you're even going to take them. Have to find out.
I tell my
a couple
guys the same
things.
thing. Guys hanging out, 35-yard line, 25 yards from the goal, way outside the box. Like, you know what? If he wants to shoot from there, great, let him. If he makes it, good for him.
Yeah. Every team's got to pick their spots. This Alabama team is going to put up points against whoever they play against. If they play defense like they played in the Kentucky game, first 2 rounds shouldn't be an issue. If they play defense like they played in the Florida game, might be telling a little bit of a different tale, especially in a 2-15 game. You don't want to give a conference champion any sort of confidence going into that second half to think that they are still in the game and they just need to knock down a couple of shots and they can win it. With every single shot going down the stretch in the second half of one of those tournament games, the pressure continues to mount. So the best players have to show up, and the team that has the best players that do show up usually is the one cutting down the nets at the end of the whole damn thing. But before we get out of here, got a couple of minutes left.
Yeah.
Give me your take on who you think is going to win this year's NCAA tournament.
Is Cooper Flagg back?
He is not back officially yet.
No, I mean, like, answer the hypothetical. Is he back? Let's say by the second weekend, Cooper Flagg's back. Then sure, I'm taking Duke. If Cooper Flagg's not back, I mean, flip a coin. It's Florida or Auburn.
Yeah.
Probably Florida, for the same reason I say that I'd take Oklahoma to upset UConn. There's too many antics going on in Lee County. All right.
Yeah.
You have no idea. Like, Chad Baker Mazzara is such a huge part of their game, and you have no idea if he's just going to get himself ejected on a whim.
Yeah.
You have no idea if Janai Brune's going to start feeling pouty and just slack off for 12 minutes in the middle of the game.
Yeah. Or
so
if just going to start jacking up shots like crazy, like he has in the past couple of games, and he's a great player. He's going to be a first-round pick in the NBA draft. Sometimes, and every team can be better at this at times, but just taking smart shots. I'm going to take the Houston Cougars to win this year's NCAA tournament. They've been really, really good. Kelvin Sampson was awesome. He's been really successful since he got there. They've moved from the American to the Big 12, and they won back-to-back Big 12 titles, pretty much knocking Kansas off the ground, kind of knocked them into the dirt at this point. They've been really good. Like I said, only lost 2 games since November. Both of those to other really good teams. Lost a game to Texas Tech. That's a team that's currently sitting as a 3 seed. They're awesome. And then lost a game to, I believe it was Iowa State. Let me go through this. Oh, no. They only lost 1 game since November. My mistake. And that was to Texas Tech. They lost 3 games before then. Lost a really close game to Auburn. Lost a really close game to Alabama. And then got knocked off in overtime against San Diego State. Since that loss, have looked incredible. I really like their region that they're in. I think they can take care of Gonzaga. I think McNeese is going to upset Clemson, so they won't have to worry about them. Purdue's interesting, but just the way that they play, in the way that Houston defends, I think they'll be able to swallow them up. I think and then the other side of that bracket, like Illinois, inconsistent. Kentucky, really talented, inconsistent. Tennessee, talented, good defense. the offense is kind of like Houston's, where it's like you don't necessarily know where it's going to come from. I think Houston's backcourt is a little bit more scoring oriented than Zakai Ziegler probably is, and you need guards that can put up points in the NCAA tournament. I like LJ Cryer a lot. When he transferred from Baylor to Houston, thought that was a really awesome move. And they've just kind of been on a roll since then. And I think, they made it to the Final Four a couple of years ago, and they've been looking to get back since then. I think this is the year they break through the Final Four and win the whole damn thing.
I have nothing to say against that.
Yeah.
Could happen. That's the thing, though. It's like I think
anything
that anything can happen, except this year. Because I think going back to the thing he said about 15 minutes ago, sort of like the way it ended up shaking up last year. I really think there is that massive chasm between like the 9 seed and everyone else, like the 9 overall. And I would go ahead and make that Texas Tech, like you said. There is a gap between 8 and 9. It's not as wide as 9 and 10, but so no, I think that when it comes down to the Elite 8, you're more than likely just gonna have 1s and 2s left. We're gonna get some really damn good basketball games out of it.
Yeah, it's gonna be some really fun games. Really excited for it. We will probably be posting a bracket group at some point. Some wise words from Will Miller. He thought that Florida should have been the number 1 overall seed.
Fair.
If you think that or not, that's up to you. Depending on what analytics or statistics best suit how you decide who wins. Gets all the committee nods, whatever. Auburn number 1 strength of schedule, most quad 1 wins in the country, has been sitting around number 1 in the country the entire season. Florida is probably playing the best basketball out of everybody. Wouldn't surprise me if they got caught somewhere. Don't have any idea where it is. They could make a real run to the Final Four. They could go play in the national championship game. If they maintain the level that they're playing at, they could win the whole thing. But they've dropped a game or 2 this season that I'm like, kind of like Alabama, where I'm like, kind of look at it and I'm like, yeah, that doesn't really make too much sense. But other than that, it's been awesome. Walter Clayton, baller. Alex Condon, baller. Just Nick Richards, baller. I mean, just Elijah Martin, baller. All of those guys, you can just go down the list, go down the roster. They're playing some of their best basketball right now. I think if one team from the SEC is going to win the whole thing, it's probably going to be the Gators.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you. Again, like I said, if Cooper Flag's not back and it's not Duke, I think it's going to be the Gators because I just don't trust Auburn to not shoot themselves in the foot. Again, on the biggest stage. Hardy, if you'll indulge me real quick, it is college lacrosse season. Let me give the good people a brief update, just a quick rundown. Maryland, back. Harvard, back. Syracuse, not back. Virginia, not back. Yale, dog water. Princeton, back. Cornell, sort of back, although they got sketchy against Penn State in overtime, lost. Hopkins is an enigma. They have struggle wins, but their only loss was against a very good North Carolina team, who I think you can say, as of right now, is a little bit back. Duke, not back. Notre Dame, not going to three-peat. And that's where we stand about halfway through the regular season.
We'll be sure to give updates when as we get into the it's at the NCAA tournament. Is that how it's categorized? College lacrosse?
Yeah. So that'll be we're only a third of the way
beginning of May
season. Like mid-May, mid-May. Okay. Usually wraps up on Memorial Day weekend.
Gotcha.
Yeah, national championship is always on Memorial Day Monday.
Nice.
I think it's in Philadelphia for the next 10 years or something crazy like that.
So that's where that portion of the country is where the majority of lacrosse players come from. So checks out.
They're just trying to make sure everybody's mom make it.
Fair enough. I would want my mom to make it as well if I made it to the
Absolutely.
national championship game.
I mean, it's lacrosse, so she still might say, "Sorry, sweetie, I got to work."
That's fair. I mean, maybe if it was in like Birmingham, could drop down to New Orleans, play it in the Superdome. That'd be pretty sick.
Well, so that they are starting to do some more. I guess you could call them outreach games, in a sense. So Maryland and Notre Dame played a couple of weeks ago, and they played in the not the Mercedes-Benz Dome. They played somewhere in Atlanta. They played that game in Atlanta.
Did they play at Turner Field?
Possibly.
Yeah.
I
Or
don't know.
they might have been at Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
It might have been. I doubt it, but it might have been.
Who knows? Maybe they were just trying. I mean, the dome sits there all year. They got to find something to put in it when it's not football season.
Oh, it was at Bobby Dodd Stadium, Georgia Tech's field.
Oh, okay, nice.
Yeah,
that's still a good spot.
Yeah, so they're doing stuff like that, putting these big marquee games in other parts of the country. There was another one. I forget exactly who it was, but they played the game out in Texas. And it was two blue bloods of the sport. So I think that's actually something that's a really good way of just kind of doing some grow the game type stuff. We're being a little more grassroots in Bladensburg. We're teaching teenagers how to pass. That's where we are at this point in the season. We had our first scrimmage. We lost 17-0 to a team from down by me, where lacrosse is, deep rooted. We grow up with sticks in our hands. We're learning how to pass.
Takes time. When you're teaching guys that have this is their first time, like you said, picking up.
They don't even have their own sticks. I got to go get them a stick off Marketplace when they show up.
Yeah, and then some of the teams you're playing against are guys that have been playing since they were in elementary school.
Yeah, and they've all got a backyard. Every one of those yards has a rebounder in it, and if their mom sees them sitting on the couch, she goes, "Have you played wall ball for an hour today, sweetie?" So it just, yeah. But that was a reminder, I think, for me that oh yeah, that is the difference. Okay.
Yeah,
we're not there yet. All right.
It just takes time.
Yeah.
It just takes time.
Takes time. Takes commitment. Takes takes reminding the coaches the level of commitment they need to beat into the kids.
Yep. So when do we want to reconvene for next episode? After the first round or the first weekend? Maybe that following Wednesday, Thursday?
Because
Sweet 16 games are not this upcoming Thursday, the following Thursday.
Do they go? Do the games this weekend go into Sunday night?
I believe so.
All right. So yeah, I think I could do Wednesday or Thursday next week. I've got a scrimmage on Tuesday. I've got a scrimmage on Wednesday. I've got a game on Friday. And then the following week, I've got a game on Monday, and I think we have a game on Thursday, but I'm not certain. And then we've got a week break, and then it's game on Monday, game on Wednesday, game on Thursday, game on Tuesday, game on Wednesday.
The time is now.
Oh yeah.
Cool. Well,
nice part about Maryland high school playoff bracket though is we can go 0-10, we still make the playoffs.
Nice.
Yep. And then it's just about pissing somebody off.
Yep. Well, all right. So then, take care.
Let's watch some basketball.
Let's watch some hoops. This is March.
Hell yeah. This is fucking March, baby.